Welcome to the Learn Tarot with Moxxie podcast, where you can learn to read the tarot for yourself and for others. Here we look at the tarot from all angles, and I share the very best ways to use it to work through past trauma and create the life that you love. So join me. So a couple announcements before we get started. The course designed to help you once and for all learn and create a relationship with your court cards is up on the Moxxie website. Yay! I'm so happy that that is up there. It's finally up there. It's a fun course. It's like $19, not a real expensive one, but it's, I think, very, very valuable in learning to really establish a relationship with those court cards. And what I'm sharing with you is how I learned them myself. And I just found it incredibly, incredibly helpful. So if you're interested in that, hop on over to the website and check out that course. Let's see, what else? Just a quick reminder to send in your questions. If you are interested in a free reading, that information is in the show notes as well. And I think that's it. So we can go ahead and get started. This week we are going to talk about three separate things. We're going to talk about using the tarot to make a quick decision. We're going to be talking about a question that somebody asked me, which I thought was really, really interesting, so I wanted to share that with you. And then for the bulk of the podcast, we're going to talk about the difference between the 10 of Swords and the Death card, because a lot of people get those confused. So we're going to go through all of those step by step. But let's get started with our activity, which is tarot for a quick decision, or tarot for making a quick decision. And this is a really simple way to get a third opinion, a second opinion, however you want to call it, when you're in a position where it's like, oh, do I do it this way or do I do it that way? Sometimes we just want somebody else to tell us what to do, right? Or at least we want somebody else to confirm what we're thinking is the best course of action. So this is just a really simple thing. What you're going to do, what you're going to do is you're going to get your cards and you are going to choose a signifier for yourself. For example, I'm choosing the moon. The moon is my signifier. And I'm taking the moon and I am just tucking it right inside my deck. Okay? Don't have any idea where it is. Feel like I'm doing a magic trick. Okay. So my signifier is getting mixed up, and I really need to know the answer to this question. And the question is, let's see, what is the question? Should I consider adding another product line to my business? I'm really considering it. I really think it's a good idea, but I'm having a hard time just like pulling the trigger on it. And before I go ahead and sign the contract, I want just a little bit more feedback on what it might look like if I do that. So I've been shuffling my cards while I've been having this little conversation, and all I'm going to be doing is flipping the cards over one at a time. Flip, flip, flip. Flip, flip. I'll be back in a second. Okay, I'm back. I wasn't going to put you through me flipping over a billion cards. So what I did is I flipped over cards just one after the other until my signifier card came up. And the card that I flip over next is the card that I will be reading. And that is the Judgment card. Okay? So what I can do now is look at this Judgment card in the context of, does it make sense for me? I really think I want to add another product line. Does it make sense for me to do this? And I think it's kind of funny that I got the Judgment card because I'm trying to make a judgment. I'm trying to make a decision, right? So sometimes it's kind of a big that we get from the tarot. So we're going to try it one more time. I'm going to flip over one more card. One clarifying card is fine, but avoid, clarifying and clarifying and clarifying, because then you're just changing the story. So what is the second card? 10 of Wands. Okay. 10 of Wands, we all remember, is the guy hunched over, carrying all of those sticks all by himself. So the feedback that I'm getting is that it could be overwhelming for me to take on this additional product line right now. That I'm feeling a little bit like I'm doing everything by myself, like all of the burden falls on me, and maybe the best judgment to make is to say, let's put this off for a little while, and let's just sit on it. So this is just one more way of, I don't want to say getting answers to questions, because I really don't like looking outside of myself for answers. I don't use the tarot that way. I use the tarot as a way to tap into what's inside and the wisdom that's in there and bring it to the surface so I can use it and access it and make my own best decisions. And this is my tool for that. This is my tool for getting it out of my conscious brain, for turning off any preconceived notions that I have of the situation, and completely giving it up to the shuffling, giving it up to the energy of the cards ending up where it's supposed to end up, so I see what I'm supposed to see. So this is just one more way that you can try to use the tarot for yourself. I find it really, really helpful. But again, some people will use this for a yes or no. I suggest using it as a decision confirming tool. Okay? So, the question. I was asked what the biggest mistakes were that I made in learning the tarot. And I take that to mean, what did I do wrong? What should I have done differently? Or what could I have done differently that would have changed the outcome? And if we were talking about a med school text, I would be saying something very different. But because what we're talking about is the tarot, and because it is such an open-ended tool, any information we learn, any information that we retain is one step further toward our knowing everything that we want to know about the tarot cards. So I can't say that there's anything that I did wrong in learning how to use the cards. I can say that maybe I would have spent a little bit more time. Well, for me, I would have spent more time on the court cards, because those were my biggest challenge, the court cards. But I would have still learned things by rote. I still would have read everything under the sun. I still would have been online looking at everything. So when it comes to your journey and your pathway to learning the tarot, don't worry if you're doing it correctly. There is no right, there is no wrong. This is one of those things that is about what you put into it is what you're going to get out of it. And every tiny bit of information that you remember is a tiny bit of information that you can use in your next reading. And as you continue little bit by little bit, those baby steps, those readings will become easier. They'll become more fluid. You'll be more fluent in tarot speak. In other words, being able to sit down with someone and walk them through a reading and tell them a story. So however you are approaching your tarot learning journey, whether it is listening to this podcast and everybody else's podcast about tarot, whether it's taking some courses of mine or somebody else's, whether it's going to a bunch of different tarot readers and seeing how they do things, it's all good. It's all pointing you in the direction of being more independent when you're making your decisions, of connecting you with your higher power and helping you to empower yourself a little bit more. Okay, I think that was my soapbox for this week. The Death card and the Ten of Swords, when we are beginning, seem like they're the same card, or seem like they logically should have very, very similar meanings. And there are actually quite a few differences between these two cards. There's a lot of nuanced difference between these two cards. And it's important to know those differences because they really do impact the way a reading goes, right? And we'll talk more about that as we get going, but let's talk about the differences in the two cards. So the Ten of Swords is a card about the end of something, sometimes death, but not usually a physical death, right? It's the end of something. And they call it the death, and he's got 10 swords in his back because in a way it's like this guy has been figuratively stabbed in the back, right? It's a betrayal. It's a far more personal vibe than the Death card, right? The Death card really doesn't look very personal. In fact, he's up there on his horse and really just very much above it all. But with the Ten of Swords, everybody is down in the muck and down in the mire, and the person the card is referring to very likely has just been, like I said, stabbed in the back by somebody. Something sudden and unfortunate could have happened to them, or depending on where the card is in the reading, potentially could happen to them if you read traditionally. A lot of times this card comes up when someone is being attacked by someone else. Often out of envy or jealousy. So, what comes to mind when I see this is, I guess, Rihanna. There were people that were, giving Rihanna a hard time about something with her Super Bowl performance. And it's like, people will look for any reason to just take someone that they're jealous of down a notch. And I don't know if that's really what the situation is, but that's a good example, right? It's without getting into politics, because that would be too easy. So yes, it is a sudden low point in somebody's life. A lot of times a misfortune or a defeat, maybe a loss of a business, maybe a business partner who screwed you over type of thing. That is the vibe of this card. Usually the person that is the subject of this card is feeling defeated. Just all of the wind is out of their sails and no words, right? It's like I'm just going to lay here face down in the mud because I can't anymore. Now, the Death card, on the other hand, is not nearly as personal, right? The Death card is a lot more of an abstract, conceptual thing, if that makes sense. They're both abstract. That's what the tarot is, right? Is to take something and move it out of its box. They're both abstract in a way, but when I say abstract, I mean that this is more of a metamorphosis, a transition, a transformation of sorts. Whereas this is more traditional death, right? What we think of as death, where some people will believe or do believe that, when we pass on, we're just transitioning from one physical state to another. We're transitioning from our physical body to our spirit. We're letting go of our meat suit, right? All of those things. And that's the kind of card that this is. It's about the end of a phase. It could be a transition out of something that you need to be finished with. It could be a transition out of, let's see. Anything, right? Eating habits, out of poor exercise habits, out of maybe, even though this is the death card, okay, maybe what you're going to be giving up, maybe what needs to die off is you're being so hard on yourself that you drink a little too much. Maybe you need to let that go. Maybe you need to say, this is the end of this phase of my life. I value myself more. I am going to let it go. I'm going to let this phase of my life die off, and I'm going to start again. I'm going to start anew. Change is painful. This was a very painful lesson for me, right? Kind of thing. But I did learn something from this process. All of these things that are kind of going on in your head. So this card is really more about letting go of what's going on for you in the present. And this one is much more about the fact that you have been betrayed in the present. Or remember, we can also look at this like we are potentially betraying ourselves, right? We talk about feeling utterly defeated. We talk about this card being a more personal card. Who hasn't listened to that little voice in their head who's just a rotten little bleep? And he's just yapping. And you can feel, right? You can feel the anxiety rising. You can feel the confidence draining out of you. Well, this could be a card that says enough of that, right? Enough of that negative self-speak. So my point being that just because, this is a stab in the back type of thing does not mean that it's necessarily you being victimized by someone else. We always need to remember with the tarot that these cards may be coming up to remind us of how we're treating ourselves. And, maybe we're victim blaming ourselves for something. And this is a card that says, look, enough is enough. You have paid your penance. You've done your time, whatever. You need to let this go and move on. You need to stop betraying yourself. Put on your big girl panties. Take a look at the fact that there is some sunshine coming up. A new day is dawning, and move ahead, right? So that's one of the biggest similarities in these cards is they both have this new day dawning kind of vibe to them. So while things might be difficult at the moment, things will be improving. There is hope on the horizon type of thing. So I hope that helps you be able to distinguish the difference between the two. I would say if I had to just give you an example of each of them, the Ten of Swords is Putin's cabinet rising up against him and saying enough is enough. Okay? That is him being utterly defeated. him being crushed under the weight of his own ego, the weight of all of these other things, right? His people betrayed him. Whereas the Death card is more about, let's see, what's our example? We'll be a little bit more upbeat with this one. The Death card is coming up because someone has finally figured out a way to counter all of the global warming, right? It's like we went through this horrible phase of being worried about the climate, being worried about what's going on our Earth, and now, ta-da! So that whole process has died off. We hit rock bottom, basically. And we realized that if we didn't do something, we were going to be no more. So that is the death of a way of being, right? And opening up as a catalyst for the new stuff. All right, I think that's it. It seems like there was more to talk about, but I can't really remember what it was, and I don't have it written down. So we're going to call it good for right now. I hope next week will be the monthly tarot scope for the month of April. So tune in and find out what's up or coming up for you for the month of April. All right, talk to you soon. Be well. Bye-bye. If you enjoyed this episode of the Learn Tarot with Moxxie podcast, please remember to like, subscribe, and comment. It helps other people find us when you guys are vocal about who we are, what we are, where we are, and what we offer. Remember too, if you want to submit a question for a tarot reading, you can sign up on the Moxxie website, and there will be a link in the show notes for you below. Those questions are questions that I will consider for using as example readings during podcast episodes. Of course, everything is 100% confidential. There will be no hints or tips about who you are, but it would be a way for you to get a question answered by me and share a learning experience with everyone else. So if you are interested in doing that, in that free reading, please head on over to the Moxxie website where you can sign up. And again, there will be a link in the show notes below. Remember too that the website has a ton of resources and freebies that are available to you that will help you on your tarot learning journey. And lastly, if you want to stay up on the nitty-gritty of what's going on at Moxxie, I invite you to be a free member of the Moxxie community. You just need to pop over there, sign up. I know that we don't always catch every single episode, and signing up will mean that when there is a new course announced, you will hear that. When there is a new blog post that I am particularly pleased with, I will send that as well. You have my word that I am not an over-emailer, because I really do not like over-emailing, and I don't like reading through tons and tons of emails that just seem to be sent for the sake of being sent. So I promise I will not do that to you. So those are some ways to stay connected with Moxxie and ways that I invite you to join the community. All right, you take care, have a wonderful week, be kind, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.